There are several challenges in life growing up from birth to maturity. There are also wonderful periods that are great blessings. In today's Parents and Teens episode, we discover that two of those times are when a shy child has difficulty making successful social relationships, and an older teenager has difficulty making the transition between childhood and adulthood. You can listen to an excellent, loving, and devoted mother express concern, ask questions, and participate in learning how to promote the success of both children. Hi, and welcome to Parents and Teens. We're meeting today with a wonderful mother who has one or more children she wants to talk about. So welcome, and would you begin by telling us a little bit about who you want to talk about and ask questions about today?
Sure. So we are a family of 6. I have 4 children. My oldest is 21. Then I have a daughter who is 16. A daughter who's 18, a daughter who's 16, and then a little one who, well, he's not so little anymore. He's 9. And the two that I would like to get some advice for are my daughters who are 18 and 16.
Would you tell us a little bit about them?
Sure. So just a little background on our family. We are a multicultural family. I am Mexican and Peruvian, and I was raised here in the United States in California, and my husband is from France. So we just moved back from France a couple of years ago. My kids have lived over there for a good portion of their lives. And so there's a little bit of this dynamic, a lot of this dynamic that this multicultural aspect of our family is sometimes often a richness for them, but often a challenge as well. So since we moved back 2 years ago, we've had some challenges, and especially when COVID hit, when the pandemic first started and we were locked down and they were on online school, this created an additional challenge because they were just starting to get adapted in their new environment and starting to make friends at school, and everything shut down. And so it slowed down that progress quite a bit. My oldest daughter, who is 18, has been able to find a group of friends. But my younger daughter, who's 16, is not quite there yet. And so there are some different challenges that we're seeing with both of them. My older daughter, she has her group of friends, but she's at a turning point in her life because she's graduating, and she's not quite sure what she wants to do after graduation. And then my younger daughter, like I said, she doesn't quite have a group of friends yet. So we are concerned for her socially.
Would you like to ask questions about each one in turn?
Yes.
Shall we start with the 18-year-old then? And if you have some questions, I'll do my best. So
okay. All right. So with my 18-year-old, we are experiencing with her a certain desire for total independence, and at the same time, a reticence to begin her adult life. So she would like to have more freedom to spend more time with her friends, which we are happy to do within certain restraints because she doesn't have a car that is entirely at her disposition. But on the same token, she is scared about college. She has told us on a few different occasions that she would not like to go to college right away. She would like to take a year to work because she doesn't know what she wants to do, which we understand. And we've told her that if she wants to work for a year to figure things out, that's wonderful. That works too. But there's a lot of mixed emotions for her and a lot of going back and forth and not quite knowing what she wants. So what we would like as parents is to learn how to give her greater independence, because is one thing she has told us, that sometimes at home she feels a little bit stifled, and how to help her have greater independence and help her to make those first steps into her adult life.
You mentioned that she had a pretty good group of friends. Before responding to your question, would you tell me what her friends are doing? Are they going on to college? Are they working for a year? Do you happen to know what their plans are?
Yes. So within her group of close friends, she has one friend who is going to be staying at home and just commuting to the local college, the local university. And then she's got another really good friend who has decided to do one semester online while still living at home. And then she has another friend who will be leaving on a mission directly after graduation. So those are her closest friends.
Okay, so your question is, all right, she's 18, she's not sure what she wants to do. She would like more independence, and you would like to give her more, but she also is afraid and has some anxieties about things.
Yeah.
Boy, doesn't that describe what's exactly like at 18?
Yes.
Every time there's sort of a threshold, kids have both those. Well, here's what crossed my mind when you asked. I think it might be useful for you to have a definition meeting where you talk over what freedom actually means in terms of a practical application. Does that mean she wants to make all or more of her decisions? She wants some things to stop applying to her at home, like family rules, or something like that. Right. And get a good, clear picture of the meaning of that you share between you as parents and her. And then I think a good step is to lay out some kind of a step-by-step plan. And so I'll take a look at family rules. So if you have a set of family rules and you want all of your children to follow them, okay, then I would pick some out, like whatever they are, transportation, being away, home, and so on. So you wouldn't invite high risk behavior, but there ought to be some way of adjusting those rules, and so on. Second one is that pick out some of the kind of work things or tasks that kids that age need to demonstrate, like financial independence, like being able to establish new friendships or relationships, which probably would be easy for her given your travels and so on. And then there might also be some where you want to clarify and acquire knowledge for her, help her do that. So I would suggest that you get her involved to help her feel more independent to do the following things. Pick out something like it doesn't matter what it is as long as it's useful. But let's suppose she applied for a job and they wanted her to have 2 or 3 new skills. And they said, here, we'll train you. That would count. There might be an online course here or there, short one, or as a training so that she has to learn something. Right. Now you think, well, why isn't that the same as high school? Well, it's because she's doing it on her own.
Right.
Okay. And then talk to her about the kind of communication patterns you have with her. Do you communicate a lot with her or very little, would you say?
Oh, we communicate quite a bit. My husband and I both will sit down with her and talk, and sometimes those talks go really well and she's open, and sometimes they don't go as well, and we feel that she closes herself to any advice from us. And so that's where we're finding ourselves right now, kind of in this, I don't know if I want to call it a tug of war, but us wanting to give her advice and her holding back, and us wanting to give her more independence, and where do we find that happy medium?
Well, why do you think she is obstinate in regard to your advice? She just not want to accept it because that would mean she's not independent? Is that what's happening?
I think so, yes. And that's part of what I mentioned earlier, that she has told us that sometimes she feels like she's suffocating in our home, and she wants to, be out and be with her friends and have more freedom. And so, yeah, we're trying to find this balance between those two things of wanting to give her more independence, but seeing that she's not completely autonomous in some aspects of her life, and wanting to give her that help and seeing that she needs the help. And so we are a little stuck right there as parents.
Okay, now here's the problem. The problem is the definition. So you cannot give somebody independence.
Mm-hmm.
You might say, here's what you could do, and here's what you could do, and so on. The paradox is that if she says, okay, I'll go do that, she's not independent.
Mm-hmm.
So apparently she's feeling that. And so then we have to say, okay, well, what do you do then? Well, the alternative would be to move her away from you, say, going to Aunt Marilyn, who lives in some faraway town, and say, why don't you go there and work for the summer? So if Marilyn is safe. Is anybody named Marilyn? No, nobody's named Marilyn. Okay, whoever she is,
right?
And you try that out, and then do that, and then what you have to do is change the advice giving just a little bit to
Right.
question asking, and
Yeah.
even some of that won't work really well.
Right.
And then when you deal with this question, see if she wants more freedom, then wonderful. If she wants to be more independent, then ask her to formulate a plan
Okay.
of how she could become more independent in terms of being able to have adult-like relationships, more financial independence, more living away from home, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if she has some anxiety about doing that, she will become like an accordion, and you need to be aware of that. Accordions go out, and they'll be there for a little while, and then they'll dash back home. It's a lot like a college freshman who lives close to home and is home every weekend for dinner on Sunday. See, something like that.
Yes.
And then they have to come back, and they just want to hear your voice and watch your face and hug you and so on. And then you say, go do it again. So you probably ought to entertain that for the next 2 or 3 years, unless she chooses to go away, permanently for at least several months in a row, then that's different.
Right.
Okay, but then I would ask her also what she's afraid of.
Okay.
And be patient and blunt about that, and say, what frightens you about this whole thing?
Well, and we have had this conversation many times, and she feels she is not successful at anything, and she is afraid that she will go to college. This is what she has expressed to us, is that she is afraid she will go to college, that she won't like it, that she won't be successful, or that she will finish college and not know what to do with her degree or not be successful in a job.
Okay, so you're talking about a more advanced level of anxiety. This is not a modest form, because she's disqualifying the future as well.
Exactly.
If she says, I'm apprehensive about this and it's all going to turn bad. All right, so one of the qualities of an independent person is that they're optimistic. So ask her for that. Say, we'd like to see more optimism, and we'll be optimistic. They also are planful. They can organize their day and carry out some executive tasks, like planning and so on. And they make decisions, but they typically make decisions after consulting with somebody. But they make decisions and lay out these qualities of independence and ask her, say, put these together in your plan, and then we'd like to help you, or you could do it on your own, and so on. Another option is to get her with somebody outside the family who will help her out. So sometimes a mentor in your church, or an adult woman somewhere else, or a counselor, a professional person could help out here a lot, especially if she's, I'll ask this question. Let me tell you what she sounds like. She sounds like somebody who's really bright, but may not have lived up to how actually intelligent she is. And so she thinks she's not all that successful.
Yes.
So part of the challenge will be to help her get a much better view of herself, and so on. So then the question is, okay, how do we do that? Well, if schools are in question, see, get an online class that the local university offers and have her take one. give her an incentive so that if she finishes it, then so on. And letter C, what doing college work. Did she do any AP or honor classes in high school?
She did not.
Okay. So she was afraid of that.
Yes, this fear and anxiety, it's not something that started just this year. This has been going on for maybe 3-4 years. That was compounded by some experiences that she went through when we were still in France, and then when we came here to the United States.
But her language skills are good, right? She's not troubled with
her language skills are very good. She doesn't believe they are, but she grew up speaking English, even though we lived in France.
Yeah. No, there, I will bet you're dealing with more than just independence. I'll bet this year something that's some traumatic experiences, and that she needs to have help in resolving those.
Okay.
And she will use them and the memory of them and the anxiety in regard to them to explain why she is immobilized for the future.
Right.
A good professional could handle that fairly quickly, I think. And a good mentor too as well. So if you
because she is able to pinpoint the traumatic experience. When we were living in France, she went into a very competitive program for her freshman year of high school. And it was a very difficult experience where she basically failed all of her classes in spite of any support that we could give her. And this completely destroyed her confidence.
I used to spend a lot of time with kids who had those kind of experiences, and I've given intelligence tests often. So I used to give them an intelligence test, and then because if I was pretty confident they were going to be quite bright, and then I'd bring the results and sit down and say something like this: "Wow, you're in real trouble." And they would say, "How come?" And I'd say, "Well, your test scores on this intelligence test are much higher than you think they are. Mm-hmm. So you might likely be dealing with grades, not because you're not smart enough, but because you have anxiety about learning and you have fear of failure." And so then we'd go to work on resolving being afraid of failing and learning how really intelligent people function. And they just function by, I've already described that.
Right.
Yeah, this will be something bigger than just a transition from, maybe bigger isn't the right word, but it's more complex.
Right. So in your opinion, work with a therapist would be helpful for her. And this is something that could be resolved quickly, getting her through that traumatic.
Yeah, if the person is good with dealing with kids, with young adults, and has some background in dealing with anxiety, achievement anxiety, and learned helplessness, it doesn't take long, especially if the person will do assignments, they're given, go try things out. They have to go out and walk to the end of the block to find out they can.
Right.
And it's like, all right, we want you to sign up for this course on whatever at the local university. They'll have some online. So if she does it, she will get credit, right? But then going through the course, you use that course to point out to her that her fears of failure are not going to be realized because she's actually probably very good and able, to learn. Okay. So we're going to have to disconfirm a lot of her fears, I'll bet.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That's fantastic. That's very helpful.
All right. Let's go to the 16-year-old then for a few minutes.
Okay. So
you sound like a great mother.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. 16.
16-year-old. So she is a brilliant little girl, a young woman now, but she has always been extremely timid and shy and has difficulty making connections with other peers. And this is not something that happened just here in the United States. Once again, this problem existed when we were still living in France. She always has had a difficult time making connections with other children her age.
Well, the origin of that is something like this. If you're shy in the first place, shyness is an inherited problem usually, but it can be moderated because kids can learn, and a lot of shy people become very confident. But I'd like to describe what it feels like to be shy. I'm aware of how hot my cheeks get, when they, okay. And so I'm watching what my body's like, my heart pounding and so on. And when I'm out with somebody, I'm not paying attention to them. I'm paying attention to what's inside me. And then that's what scares me, that it'll expose me, and then I'll be embarrassed, and then I'll faint, and then, bad things will happen, and I will lose my reputation forever. They just they horribilize it. Okay, is what it's called. All right. So if it's shyness, if that's the origin, then it's like getting somebody, and if you have great rapport with her, she'll let you help her. So I would suggest that you do the following things. Make a list of 10 social situations. Meeting somebody, grocery store shopping, could be anything, and go through them with her. Okay. And you're going to demonstrate positive social behavior so she can watch for the first 3 or 4. Then we're going to ask her to practice, see if she can do that. And she will say, I don't want to. And we'll say, well, we know you don't want to, but look at the options that are available to you. And they are not good if you don't do this. Unless you're like one of the famous British writers who were so shy that they never married, never dated, but they were famous for, Charlotte Bronte say, for writing a book that everybody read. I once visited her home, and I thought, whoa, Wuthering Heights was right behind her house. So, but boy, were they socially reserved, and so on. And so you could do that, number one. Number two, you've got to train her to pay attention to things that are external to her when she's with other people. So when you're watching TV with her and you're watching a good show, if you can stop it without ruining the show, stop her and say, tell me what that person's motive is. And what kind of gestures did you see? And help her come to understand more about others, so that we move her perceptual set away from herself to include more awareness of others.
Okay.
All right. Now, once you start doing that, she will have all sorts of apprehensions about bad things. Okay. And then what we want to do is to pick out something not too risky, but something that would expose her a little. Let me give you, for instance, I once had a patient who was frightened, an adult woman, of what other people thought. It was just awful. And I discovered that she had a tile floor in her kitchen. So I had her sweep up the pile of dirt and leave it there for a week. And when people came to visit, I said, now I want you to say to them, what do you think of my dirt? And she said, why would I do that? And I said, well, because you're living your life terrified, what other people think. And you need to learn they're not thinking about you. They're thinking about what you're thinking of them, and so on. So then I had her fix one half of her hair and not the other, and go shopping. So she'd go off, and she was worried about that, see. And she finally got over that. She thought, what happened? She said, nothing. Nobody looked or at me or said anything. And I said, they're busy shopping, and so on. So you have to do something to help disqualify the negative possibilities that a shy person will think.
Right.
Okay. Then we have to find the right setting for her to announce that she's shy.
Okay.
Shy people typically do not want to admit it. They're afraid to admit it. So they won't say, I'm shy. So it's a little like this. It's like having her come to breakfast and looking at the family and saying, hi, I'm quite shy. This is my name and I'm a shy person. I just thought you'd know I'm going to be shy all during breakfast. And then we all smile and go ahead and eat. And we say, okay, well, that was pretty good for a shy person. And then you pick another setting and so on and do a few. One of the fears that you can get rid of is just simply by smothering it. It's like if you're afraid to give a public speech, for example, one of the best ways to cure that is to just stand up and say, I am so terrified of giving talks that I might actually block and faint while I'm doing this. So if I faint while I'm giving this talk, please know that I'm just lying on the carpet and I'll be okay, in a few minutes. And then they watch in to see how people take that, and they've already identified the worst possibility. All right. And then that leads me to another possibility. If you've done these others, if you want to have her do something that's socially inappropriate.
Okay.
I know, let me give you, for instance, this will sound funny, but it just works really well. So I once had a patient, he was 30 years old, and he was so shy that he had never dated.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and so I asked him, I said, do you want to date? And he said, yes, I'm ready, I'd like to date. And I said, okay, please go to the mall, bump into 10 people. And when you bump into them, would you look at your watch and give them the wrong time? And he said, are you serious? And I said, yeah, it's just exactly what I want. Now, what he's doing is violating social etiquette norms, right?
Right.
All right. So he came back in 2 or 3 hours and he said, it's hard to bump into people intentionally. I said, well, did you do it? And he said, yeah, I got all 10. And then he said, I said, did you give them the wrong time? And he said, I did that. And then I said, that is the worst thing I've ever heard. I cannot imagine there be anything worse than that. And he said, well, you asked me to do it. And then I said, if you've already done the worst possible thing, there's nothing else that would match that, right? And he started to laugh and he said, that's right. And I said, now, would you go out and ask my receptionist, introduce yourself to her and ask her if she knows any single women, if she would line you up? And he said, are you serious about that? And I said, sure. And so he walked out and he came back and I said, how'd that go? And he said, I did it. Now he called back in a few days and he said, I'm not coming back. And I said, that's probably good. How come? And he said, I've got a date.
So it was successful.
So you can help a shy person move along a little teeny bit at a time and then do something that violates her own, it's just, make it simple. It's like going to church without makeup on, just to see what happens, like that. See. All right. Now, if you can do that and have a little bit of fun at it, and you can laugh often and expose it openly, it's okay. But if she is long-term shy and long-term, now you have to be slow and easy, because these feelings are very tender, boy. And so you have to just move along a little bit, a single bit at a time, single step at a time.
Right.
A lot of enthusiasm, a lot of positive, a lot of reinforcement.
So she is in spite of her shyness, she is a very brave girl. So if she wants to try something, she will do it. Last year when she wanted to be on the dance company, and she went and she did it. And that was really scary for her, but she did it. And anytime she wants to do something, as scary as it is, she will do it. But her problem is more making connections, making meaningful connections with other kids her age and knowing what to talk to them about.
All right. Let's address that, okay? All right. Simulated activities really help with this.
Okay.
All right. So different kinds of people. All right. So you have to give her the basic introduction. My name is so-and-so. All right. And then give her an introductory question.
Okay.
All right. And an open-ended one is, I'd like to know about, as opposed to where you're from. Say, I'd like to know where you're from, so the other person can talk. And then teach her to nod her head and listen while the person is talking, so they'll keep talking.
Okay.
When you nod your head and say, they keep talking. See, so teach her some listening behavior, so she has a plan. All right.
Right.
And then if she's willing to do this, then you go out and you have her meet 1 or 2 new people a week and practice this map, asking a question and even giving them a compliment. Say, you look nice today. And when she comes back and say, did you give him a compliment? Did you ask questions? Did you nod and say, And if she says yes, you say, great. All right. Then you take a look at this question. What types of issues would people be noticing about the age of her friends, and what would be different between that and adults? Okay. And what would be the same? And so you identify categories of questions like things that they're interested in, where their talents are, what their strengths are, and give her the tools like the questions to ask, and then have her practice on people in the family, then go do it and come back. And when she can give compliments and so on, and eventually she'll relax because they'll start asking her questions. Here's the key.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody asks about her, she needs to be able to tell a little teeny bit of information and then some experience that had an emotion attached to it. So along the conversation, let's suppose you asked me where I was from, and I said, well, I'm from this state and I grew up on a farm. Well, really? Well, what was that like? And I said, well, it was, and then you would ask her this question: what happens to people who live on farms? Well, they know how to work hard because they have to. All right. So you'd ask them, well, what's that like? And you give her these questions open-ended. What's it like? And how did that seem? And so on. And then they'll start telling you about this so that you can learn about them. But she has to be prepared to disclose some of those same things about her. Time when you no longer gave her a doll for Christmas, for example, or when her puppy died. Now, the reason for that is that if she is telling about some heartfelt story, when she's talking, it will form an emotional connection with other people.
Right.
That's how you do it.
Right.
Okay. And then you also could teach her to pay attention to and watch people's facial expressions and how to interpret them. And that's what you do while you're watching TV.
Okay.
See, you're wonderful because you nod. We've been talking and nod. Your eyes blink. If you're not listening, your eyes won't blink. And
is that right?
Right.
That's good to know.
They have to blink every 3 or 4 seconds. Or the next time you get upset and yell at one of your kids, watch their eyes. Their eyes will open and they're not blinking and they're not hearing a thing you're saying. Okay,
that's a great tip. I'll remember that one.
So you wait until they calm down, their eyes start to blink, and you say,
okay.
All right. No, it's, Why try that out and see if they help you.
Okay, I will try some of those ideas then. That's wonderful.
Well, you've been great today. Thank you very much. I'm sure the questions you raised will help others, and boy, I appreciate that a lot. Thank you again.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
If you're interested in having a conversation with Dr. Scoresby about your teenager and having it used on our podcast for the benefit of other parents who might be facing something similar, please contact us on mattersmostmedia.org or message Do What Matters Most on Facebook. Thank you for listening to this episode of Do What Matters Most, which is sponsored by FirstAnswers.com, where you can find new tools for families and parents of 21st century kids with a focus on emotional self-reliance. Visit FirstAnswers.com to sign up for a free newsletter. Find Do What Matters Most on Facebook and our website, mattersmostmedia.org, where you can ask Dr. Scoresby your own questions. Remember to subscribe to stay up to date with new episodes. Give us a rating and write a review on the podcast app or Google Podcasts and let us know what you think about Do What Matters Most.